Welcome back, everyone. This is J.R. Flatter from Flatter headquarters for our Two Roads Leadership seminars. And this week we're talking about excellence in proposal writing. And we have the honor of having Miss Lisa Covington here, who's our Senior Proposal Manager, also a PMP, and many other attributes to her name. And I'll let her introduce herself in a few seconds. So as usual, we'll just have a casual conversation and you can lay all your expertise on our crowd. So who we're talking to are our peers. So anybody that you can imagine out there that's in your chair, writing for a living all day, every day, multiple proposals in and out the door all the time, that's who you're talking to. So feel free to give them any insights that you possibly could think of. And with that, I'll pass the floor over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do for a living.
Sure. So as JR mentioned, my name is Lisa Covington, and I have actually been with Flatter, gosh, I think we're coming up on 3.5 years now. And it's hard to imagine. It is hard to imagine. It's kind of been a whirlwind. I feel like it was like it always is, jump in feet first and just run and go, and it's been wonderful. But I didn't actually set out to get into this business. That's kind of been, it's an interesting path. And I don't know that anybody really says, I want to be, you know, a kid growing up says, I want to be a proposal manager. They don't even know what that is. And I certainly never said that. I got into it because I was tired of, I was on a government contract doing a lot of administrative type work, and I was bored. So the company that I was with at the time had a new business development and capture person, as well as a new proposal manager. And when I questioned them about how they got into it, and I told them I thought it was interesting, I think they loved hearing that, because I think a lot of people run as fast as they can when somebody wants to talk about working on a proposal. So to that end, I started working with them a little bit, sort of taking it as, even in my off time, really, because I had to dedicate myself to my contract work. So lunch hours and breaks and so forth, to try to learn a little bit more about it. And I considered it an education, even though I was sort of, you know, working quite a bit. Ultimately, they found me to be helpful. And so they brought me on the team, and a position was created for me. And so that's kind of where it all started, and it took off from there. But what it is basically just taking, the government puts out a request for proposal. You have a set of instructions and evaluation criteria. And so that's sort of the simplicity of it. You need to map your proposal to the instructions, the evaluation criteria, but you need to do it creatively, thoughtfully. You need to have some kind of an edge. There are all kinds of other things that go into it: staffing and pricing and management plans, just any variety. And no two are, or rarely are two the same. They're structured differently. Evaluation criteria are different. So it's always sort of the working of a puzzle to put it together, and figuring out who on your team can help you to put that puzzle together. Why would the customer select you? There are just so many factors that go into it. So it can be very challenging. You're time constrained. As we were just talking about previously, it's always a challenge, because you want to do more. You never feel like it's done. A wise person once told me, it's never finished, it's just turned in. Because there's always something else you think about later. It'll drive you crazy.
Yeah. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about several things. And first and foremost, I got to congratulate you on your recent win. Just came in last night. How exciting for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. A total team effort on that one.
So you won it twice. Talk to us about that.
And this is also I think from the time I started doing this particular type of work, I don't know, 11 or 12 years ago, there has been the industry has really changed. I don't think you saw the kind of, protests and so forth that went on when I first came into it. You just won and there weren't all these protests. Now just about
Mhm.
everything over a certain threshold will be protested. This particular bit of work that we won was not, it didn't meet the threshold for a protest. So it wasn't, it was an agency level protest, which was, once again, and that's what I also love about this, is there's always something new to learn. There's always a new circumstance. It's a constant learning curve. So, which, keeps it interesting. But this was an industry or a agency level protest that was done. So the government had to go back. It was something that was apparently on their end of it, and I don't have any details as to what the issue was. I think it was something to do with how the solicitation was let, the vehicle it was on, something to that effect. So we won it, and then we didn't have it anymore. They decided they would re-release it. I think it's been 5 months
Yeah, quite a
since
while.
we originally won it. Yeah. And so when it came back out again, we resubmitted our winning proposal with a few tweaks from a fellow proposal manager. And but we had, all the same key essential ingredients, even the same personnel were still available, and we won it again. So
Great.
it's good stuff.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we've talked a lot about, I know this is your first time with us, but we've talked a lot in previous webinars about the phases of the business and how we all work together. And so you're in the proposal phase. So the left of you is capture, and to the right of you is execution.
Right.
And so those are 2 touch points for you. And then you work very closely with the headquarters and the HR. And could you just talk about some of that work that you do and how you manage all of that complexity?
So it's kind of organized chaos, I think. I think sort of key to everything is relationships, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been a main thing, and being able to laugh and not take yourself too seriously. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really important. From, again, just being able to get along with people in the capture phase and in the execution phase. Everybody has something at stake on either end, and you have to keep that in mind, and you have to be very respectful of that. I think, when you talk opinions, there are always going to be disagreements and some bumps, but I think it's just always very important that it stay a team effort, and a win is never one person.
Mm-hmm.
From It's never, or rarely would it be one person. It really is a team effort, from capture to putting the proposal together, to staffing, either at the proposal stage, or sometimes you don't have to do as much of the staffing until you actually win. But it all comes into play, and every proposal has different requirements. So there are different departments you need to you need to speak to. From HR, some proposals you're required to talk a little bit more about the types of benefits that you offer your employees and those kinds of things than others, for example. But I think the key to all of it really is those relationships, because you need to be able to know that when you need somebody's assistance, you need somebody to weigh in, the key is to get them to want to help you, and to have
Mm-hmm.
everybody engaged in the process and the wins and the losses, so that it really is, everybody basically has, as you said before, the skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's key to running a proposal successfully.
Yeah, because like you're talking about, even the program managers that are out in the field delivering excellence, and then waterfalling down from them to their teams, we know what they're doing, but we're not doing it. And so we certainly
Absolutely.
don't have the level of expertise they do. And so I'm sure you're calling on them a lot to say, hey, I need a paragraph here, a paragraph there. how do you incentivize or how do you motivate them to be part of that?
So I think what I have found is that most people are really do want to talk about what they do and
Mhm.
they're excited about it. Um, so I think oftentimes, and if you give them specifics or examples, I think that's also helpful. I think giving people open-ended tasks where they don't have a lot of guidance is very
Mhm.
difficult. I think some guidance is always good. Sometimes, well, for example, a lot of times with our past performance references, I actually reached out to a program just today about a proposal that we're planning to submit, and I needed some information that I wasn't able to find. I couldn't figure out if we really did this work or if we didn't, and so I needed to reach out to the program because I couldn't. I felt that we surely must. So
Mhm.
um, they were very willing to help out, and I got a couple of paragraphs that I was looking for, so I'm kind of ready to roll on that now to get that piece of it done. But now I find that people generally do, again, it's relationships, it's how you go about it, and giving them, they need to have an understanding of context and why you need it. I think at Flatter we've done a really good job, in a lot of the program manager meetings and so forth, and helping them to understand how important all of their work is to not only the programs that they're working on now, but programs that we want to bid on in the future. Um, we have excellent CPARs, and I'm really proud of that. And it feels really good to be able to use quotes from those CPARs. And the reason we have these is because of the folks that are doing such a great job on these programs. And I think they feel incentivized. When you basically go out to them and say, "Hey, I know you're doing a great job on this, and I want to share that on this proposal." And I think that gets them,
Mm.
that brings that willingness to contribute.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, that's one of the things as the chairman and the founder that I worry about the most is how do you incentivize people? And you can only give them so many pay raises and so many bonuses. That's at the end of the day, not going to get it. What you're describing is absolutely make them feel part of the win, make them proud of the work they're doing. Yeah, that's really good. So I've mentioned a few times about this business cycle that we're in, this 2 to 3 years long. So from somebody identifying some piece of work that potentially we could do, and then qualifying it, is it real? Do we have a chance of winning it? And then capturing it, which is really what takes a lot of effort over time. And then rolling into proposal. Uh, how do we neck that down so that, I mean, there's infinite requirement in very finite time. So I'm sure you're involved somehow in necking that down from infinite to manageable.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. So I think that you always need to start planning as far out as you can, first
Mm-hmm.
of all. Um, and then looking at, so on some of these proposals, for example, things that we know we're going to be looking at recompetes on pretty
Mm-hmm.
soon. Um, for example, it's been a little over 2 years ago, we did have a nice sort of wind cycle going on one of our contract vehicles, and we won quite a bit of work. And so now we're looking at, those are going to come up for recompete pretty soon. So, there's a few things that go into that at this point. And a lot of it's capture related. So we need to be looking at where will those be recompeted, because the vehicle that we currently have them on, that vehicle's not going to be there at that point. So now is the time to start sort of figuring out where that work is going to go and how we can continue to bid on our work. So that's one aspect of it, and that's more, I guess, sort of in the capture phase of it. But the proposal that we write for, I'll give an example. The proposal that we write for a piece of work that we've been doing for, say, 3 years is not the same proposal that we would have written for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to look different. Even if the statement of work looks the same, obviously it's going to look different. You're going to have a lot more to talk about. You have to be really careful though. And this was something, again, a fairly recent recompete that we did that fortunately we won. Um, the program manager, extremely knowledgeable about the program, and so he's thinking of it as in, this is how the program's running. I'm looking at this piece of paper that says, this is what we need to write to.
Mm-hmm.
And so for somebody, and he wasn't the program manager when we actually bid on it. So for somebody that has not been involved in a lot of actual proposals and is helping you to write this, trying to get that understanding of, I totally get what you're saying, that this is, you think this is what they really mean, or this is what they really want, but this is what we have to write to. Exactly. We need to be really careful to stay within the scope of what they've asked us for. Now, we can come up with creative solutions. If we know that there are competitors, we can think of ways to what we call ghost them. And that's not to necessarily say bad things about them, but to say good things about us that sort of maybe it aren't the same things that we could say about those competitors. If there's something that we really shine at, and that we know somebody that's competing with us for this work for does not, we want to talk about it. And again, not to name names or whatever, but just to make sure our value is really shining. But the key with that particular with recompetes and so forth really is that we need to just look at what are the actual requirements and not get too crazy with, where things are going and that kind of thing, but to really look at the detailed, here's what section L looks like, here's what section M looks like, and here's how we have to write this.
Yeah. You know, just talking about that the other day. When you see a proposal, respond to the proposal. Don't respond to
right
what isn't there, or gold plating. We call it gold plating sometimes, where you give them what they want plus, and you can actually scare them away, scare your potential customer away. Like, wow, I don't need that. I can't afford that, or
right.
I wouldn't know how to manage that if I did select them. So you have to be very mindful of that. And you talked a moment ago about it being an art and a science. And as I listen to you, I can hear that it's not just straightforward, here's what it says and here's how I respond to it.
Right.
It's an artistic endeavor. And so you've been here 3.5 years, but you've been in this business for 17 years, you said, I think. And we've been in business 19 years, so about the same length of time. There are just some people who can't get their head around what you do for a living. Right? I'm sure you've seen people come and go, and talk about what do you think it takes to be successful in your shoes?
I think there's a certain tenacity that needs to be present. I think that unwillingness to let it go until the last minute, honestly, I think is kind of what needs to be there. It needs to matter. Some people could just, admittedly, there are times when you have a very frustrating situation with a request for proposal. Perhaps I can think of many circumstances where things aren't clear, or they could be interpreted different to different people. And so you're trying to figure out, how do I really answer the mail on this? We bid one of those together and are performing on that now. And there's an element of, you get to ask the questions of the government. Well, you have to keep moving while you're waiting for those answers to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be frustrating if the answers, take too long. Is it going to get extended? Is it not going to get extended? So I think patience is also important. I can't promise that that's always something I do a great job of having and displaying, but I certainly understand its importance. And I think I maybe get a little too passionate at times about it, but I think that's probably a good thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it can kind of go either way, but I definitely think patience, I think organization, diligence, and definitely a sense of humor. I think that's kind of key to the whole thing, because how many have we just proposed on one, JR, where for a customer, and decided we'd put the proposal together. and submitted the proposal, and they came back and said, we don't have the funds for this. So nobody's getting an award.
Yeah.
You know?
I stayed up for 72 hours straight one time for one of those.
Yes.
I found the requirement at the last minute. It was in our early days. And I literally stood in my kitchen for 3 days and responded to it. I sent it in and they canceled it.
Yeah.
One of the things I hear you indirectly saying is action passed is not action completed. So
right.
Once it's off your desk, it's not done, right?
No.
So before it gets to your desk, you're still involved, right?
Yes. At every level. I mean, so yes, in as we said, in sort of the capture phase, and then even execution. I'm interested. Sometimes I know folks just want to pass it off. So that's important too, to talk about a little bit. You do really, there are issues that you do need to think about in execution. You do need to make sure that it's something that you can execute on. And those are, winners' problems to a certain degree, but it's important to understand what it is going to take to do it. And are you willing to do that to make it happen? And I think most companies are. I certainly know we are, with our customers. And so, but those are considerations that we have to have.
And I know you have a win that's hours old and you're already thinking about some of the unintended consequences of that win. What might those be? Brittany just whispered something to me a minute ago.
Certainly being able to execute at the price you bid, that's huge. Is there equipment that's needed? How quickly do you have to get it ramped up? Can you get these people on the ground? It just really depends in every situation, but that's, always something, and that's usually something we have to write to. There are transition in plans and so forth that we have to write as part of our proposal. So we always need to be sure to go back and look at that. And a lot of times the government's going to want to see that maybe you wrote it in draft in the proposal, and you're going to have deliverables that are due right away. There's it's a huge undertaking.
And as you're speaking, I'm reminded that you're not managing one at a time, right? How many do you have going out the door in the next 7 days, 10 days?
We have, I'm going to say we have 3 right now.
Yeah.
At this time.
Those are a couple of years coming, and they didn't just show up, and so you're managing multiple at the same time, and you're actually lighter than I thought you would have been. I thought you would be in the high single digits, low double digits. So
no, honestly, it has. So we just got out of that period, and we're getting back into it. I know there are a few that are getting ready to come down on us, but we just have a few right now. There may be some additional, and the majority we prime, but we do have some sub opportunities, and certainly play a role in trying to write to those and do whatever we need to do to be a good sub for our prime contractors that we're working with.
That brings up an interesting topic. If you're a prime contractor, you're kind of a master of your own destiny. Why would you subcontract? Why would we do that to ourselves?
Oh my gosh, so many reasons. Well, we're currently a small business. It's a great way to get in on some opportunities that, quite frankly, we may not have the actual, we may have this piece of it. We may have just a part. We have this experience. We know how to write to this part of it, but we can't, write to this huge thing, or this came out full and open, and we have all this great past performance, but they want a certain dollar value, or else it's not going to count. So for those kinds of reasons, and it goes both ways. At times we may, as a small, an SDVOSB, we may be the prime and have large subcontractors that are, that are working with us. So it definitely is valuable. And also, in some ways, there's a little less, obviously there's less management to it and so forth. But I really think, building your skill set, building your past performance are all very important. And then also having those relationships so that when something does come out as a set aside for small business, if we have 4 out of 5 of these capabilities, but we don't have this 5th one, or we're not strong enough, and we think this company over here can help us, certainly we want them to, we want to have that relationship so that they're ready to jump in and help and be part of that win.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you want to get into a new business area that you don't have any past performance in, but you might be in the right small business category, you might know the customer, but you don't have the past performance to win or to be competitive or manage the risk. So yeah, we team a lot, prime and sub. We always like to be the prime, but certainly we won't push away from subbing.
Right.
So you mentioned very briefly a moment ago about pricing and this idea of price to win. Talk to us how you do that. How do you know what to bid?
I think there's a few ways to go about it. It depends on what the evaluation criteria again are. Nobody wants to bid, or people tend to shy away from LPTA. I don't think that's necessarily always going to be the case for us. We have did some LPTA type work. Those can be
crushed several times in LPTA too.
I was just going to say that, just because I could think of a very good proposal that we did for a customer of ours, and we just couldn't get there on price, so we didn't win it, even though they were really happy with us, and we put together a great proposal. But it just doesn't matter how great the proposal is if you can't get there on the price. So those can be very frustrating. But so as far as the pricing of it goes, a lot of it is your research, is your depending on, again, is it on a contract vehicle versus something that comes out on Fed Biz Ops or whatever it is. So you may have rates that you need to stay within. So you have to take all of that into consideration. Did the government dictate labor categories, or did they not dictate labor categories? And then you need to look at where you can really get. Again, evaluation comes in hugely, because they're, is it best value? Are they going to consider? And then so all of that is the stuff that's said in the proposal. But you also have to know your customer and kind of know, these guys are just not willing to pay any extra, or they're gonna, they're almost, even though it doesn't say LPTA, they go to the lowest price. So I think, those kinds of things definitely play in.
And you mentioned the term black hatting a while ago or ghosting, I think you called it.
Yes.
Knowing who your competitors are and what kind of rates they might bid. We're always trying to remain competitive, but also we've decided we're not going to work in some markets that are so narrow and so competitive. At the end of the day, the 5 elements that go into pricing, the fee, the salary, overhead, G&A, and fringe,
right?
You back into those and say, here's what I think I can find this skill set in the market. I know what my overhead, G&A, and fringe are, because actually some customers want thicker fringe and thicker overheads,
right?
Because they want you to take care of your people. Some customers not so concerned about that. Some customers we have overseas, perhaps in environments that aren't so friendly. So all of that gets built into this art and science that you described earlier. But at the end of the day, you throw it across the fence and hope for the best.
Absolutely.
So a couple of other questions. One is, how did we find you? If somebody wants your job, not yours, because we want you here for a long time, but if somebody wants your job or wants to sit in your chair, how does someone find them, and what do they say on their resume?
Oh, that's a good question. I know for me, I'm not sure you found me. I think I found you guys.
Oh, okay.
So that was very fortunate. I think when they talk about the work that they've done, a lot of times, you know, people can say a lot of different resumes, you know, they say a lot of things. People can elaborate on resumes. I think most proposal manager resumes say a lot of the same thing. Obviously, when you're applying for any job, it's just like a proposal. You know, it is just like a proposal. You need to answer the requirements, right? So if I see that there's a job out there and here are the things I need to be able to do, then here are the things that need to show up in my resume, those sort of key words or whatever it is. But I think that resources like LinkedIn, I think a lot of it's word of mouth. I think, you know, knowing where people have worked and, you know, who they've worked with. I really think a lot of it is, you know, just comes down to, you know, it's a pretty small community, really. I have found, I mean, I run into the same people over and over and over again. And a lot of it's about reputation and so forth. I know when we have interviewed proposal managers, proposal writers, and so forth, a lot of it's in the language that they use, though, as far like I connect with them or I don't connect. I will instantly know that, hey, we're talking about the same thing. When I came to Flatter to interview, I interviewed with actually Oliver Chang and Brittany, and we had a great discussion because we both remember, like, I kind of started out in CIOS in the Marine Corps world with a large business, and so we could talk the same language. We could really connect over some things. So, but yeah, that's a tough call because I've seen, you know, folks that I wasn't sure how they would do, and they've done great, and I've seen folks that I thought were going to really do a fantastic job, and yet somehow it just didn't work out. So that's a tough one. I've seen people with a very high degree of education, a lot of experience, and they just don't quite have whatever it is. And then I've seen folks that that just pick up on it like crazy, and I just don't know that there's a real way to sort of weed that out.
Laughing because I'm remembering a certain somebody fall asleep at their desk. I think that might be who you're talking about.
Right, and there can't be any sleeping on the job. It shouldn't be that boring. I think, you know what, I think a lot of it too is just that sort of, I said, curiosity. Like, I can't help myself. This is kind of silly, but when we talk about pricing and just like when we're sort of trying to figure out what's going on, you know, an RFP, say we're expecting an RFP, it's supposed to drop, but it hasn't dropped yet. You know, I love nothing more than to get into the federal procurement data system and start like poking around to see if, you know, maybe they've, you know, did they get their 6-month extension? Did it, you know, is it there? What can I find out about money on that contract? Like that kind of thing. I love it. So I think it's just being able to be excited about the work you're doing. And the other really cool thing about proposals and proposal writing is it's an iterative process, and there's a beginning and there is an end. Yeah. And that's nice because, you know, you sort of get that fresh start with every new proposal.
Yeah. I don't know if you realize you just geeked out for about the last 2 minutes.
Sorry. That's a lot of fun. Doing that kind of research, I think, is a lot of fun, though.
That's why you have your job, and that's why I don't sit in that chair. I admire you greatly. So talk to us a little bit about the phases of what you do. Because I know you're one of 5 phases in our business, but even within your phase, there are sub-phases. So RFP finally lands on your desk.
Right.
And we say go, because it's not go until you see it, right?
Right.
Something can change in the 11th hour.
Yes.
The size status, the small business status, any number of things. And so we're not a go until you read it, and then we hit go. So talk about that pre-go, and then what are the phases after we say go?
So the first thing I generally do is I go and look at the instructions and the evaluation criteria, and then I'll go look at the statement of work. And then, you know, we always have to get into contract clauses and those kinds of things. But really, we're just looking to see, is this, something we can do, want to do? Did it come out LPTA and we weren't expecting that? Those kinds of things. So that's sort of the first thing. Everybody looks at it, and I'll say, okay, here's a questions template. Everybody read this, start putting your questions, together, both questions internally that we need to ask ourselves in our team, and then questions also that need to go out to the government. And then we usually have a kickoff, and sorry, I think somebody else just joined us. We'll have a kickoff. My screen changed just a bit. We'll have a kickoff, and that's kind of where we'll talk through all of the things. Everybody gets a chance to sort of talk about, here's what it is, and where we're a go or a no-go, or what things may change when they answer the questions. And we'll start, when we do that kickoff, I generally have a schedule planned out. So the phases would be like I would say maybe we're referencing like the color team phases, where we'll start putting together, a pink team. We want to get assignments out to everybody, and we want to start writing to that level at a pink team, which is really pulling our thoughts together, making sure we sort of have a cohesive and coherent solution, and are kind of all on the same page. And then from there, we'll move to a red team, where we're starting to tighten everything up and work our way through the pricing, the green team pricing, and as well as final submission type of things, a white team, a white glove, a gold team, etc., all the way through proposal submission. It just changes with each proposal that we do, though. The time frame, you have proposals sometimes where it's like a 7-day turn and you need to get it out the door quickly. You may have 30 days and then they end up extending it for 30 days. So it's just always changing. So those phases, we try to stick to the plan as much as possible, but they're, a little bit flexible.
So the last question I have for you is probably your least favorite. And we chatted about this very briefly a couple of days ago, but you're a winner in all measurements, but you also lose a lot more than you win.
Yep.
Talk to us about that. We talked about 330 gets you in the Hall of Fame in baseball. So what gets you in the Hall of Fame?
So yeah, that's tough. Well, there's a couple of things, sort of the way that I think about every single proposal that we do. Yeah, most often we don't win. We bid a lot, and it'd be great to have that, that 80% win rate or whatever, but I don't know of anybody that has that, that ability to win at that rate. But every single proposal that we do, we're building something. Every single time we're building new material. And, we always ask for a debrief. So, and, we do these hot washes. So we learn with every single proposal we submit, and that makes us better. So the next one's better. So we lost, because of these reasons this time, we couldn't quite get there. Again, I can't say enough about kind of understanding your competition and what your competition might do. Because it doesn't matter, and this is sort of the thing as well, even if there are only 2 bidders, if you're not first, you're last.
Yeah.
When it comes to winning a proposal.
First, last, yeah.
There's no second place. So yeah. it can be kind of crushing. I think you have to be pretty resilient though, and come back from it quickly, because it's a lot of work. I mean, you've worked on this for, it depends, sometimes you do these things at the last minute, these bluebirds, and other times you've captured something for a year, 2 years, sometimes more. I mean, I can think of a few that we've done where we have been that far out looking at them. And so when I think it's easier to accept it when it's a bluebird than something you've put a lot of effort and time into. But the wins feel so good, it just keeps you motivated to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think every time a baseball player swings the bat, he expects to hit the ball.
Right,
Every time you
absolutely.
take a snap, you expect to make a first down. Um, every time we write a proposal, I don't think we ever purposely write losing proposals.
Never, right?
It's just such a hyper competitive market that every billet, every contract is just hyper competitive. And, you know, you're playing and winning in that environment. So kudos to you. Um, so the last thing I wanted to say, and then I'll leave you with the last word, is you do a lot of writing. You look at a lot of blank pieces of paper.
Right.
So for me, I have to close the door and just do it. So can you talk to us about what your process is? I know you have to have writer's block once in a while, and you have to say to yourself, I can't believe I'm writing this for the 100th time. You reuse stuff, but every one is unique.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about that magic.
Oh, I don't know if it's magic. There's a lot of caffeine involved. You probably noticed that I'm an early morning person.
Yeah, you are.
And so when I really have something I need to be serious about, you know, if something is due or I have promised myself I'm going to make this much progress on it, I think you need to understand, you know, when is your best time to really be working on that. For me, it really is early morning. I remember a proposal that we were working on, and I had, and that's the other thing is giving very clear guidance. So I said, by close of business, I needed it back. Well, of course, that's not, you know, that means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Generally say,
11:59.
yeah, you could say 5 o'clock. But so for me, I said, to clarify, I said, I will be up at 3 a.m. to work on this. So if I can just have it by 3 a.m. So whether that's 9 o'clock for you, midnight, whatever, I just want it by 3, because I know if you get it to me at 9 o'clock tonight, I'm, you know, unless it's due like tomorrow, it's probably not going to be my most effective time to work on it. So in this particular instance, it was like, I want to say I got up a few minutes early, so it might have been like 2:58, and I still didn't have it back. And I you know, knew that this partner would get this back to us. They were a sub to us on this particular effort. And sure enough, at like, just as I was getting ready to bang out an email, because we were on a timeline, she shoots it over and it's like 2:59, and I cannot believe it. So we had a good laugh about it, you know, via email. And that was just, I guess she's a late night person. So that was her preference. And I guess she was heading to bed while I was getting up. But I think that's a lot of it. But it is hard. Sometimes it's good to change your environment a little bit when you're having a block. I think if you can sort of relocate yourself a little bit or change things up, even your routine, maybe a little bit can help. I mean, know what time is good to work for you, but you know, maybe it's moving to a different location, or just if it is the middle of the day and you're struggling a little bit, go out, you know, switch to something else, get a breath of fresh air, and then come back. But as you said, you do at some point have to sit down, lock yourself in a room, and make yourself do it. But
well, thanks for everything you do. Congratulations again on your win, and we love having you here, and I think you're doing an amazing job. So
thank you.
thanks
It's
for
been awesome.
spending some time with us. I know it's going to be invaluable to whoever might listen to it. We have a couple of your teammates on the line here. John, Summer, you got anything you wanted to ask Lisa before we sign off?
The only thing I would ask Lisa is how you mentioned getting the feedback after the contracts.
Yes.
How honest a feedback do you think? I guess call me the pessimist, but I always feel like some of these things there's an insider decision that's already been made. So, and I can see wanting that feedback and how we can make it better. But what is your confidence level that the feedback you're getting is actually accurate? I guess.
I think that we typically, the feedback that we get, I think I just kind of want to say we can tell. Oftentimes there are things where we say, you know what, that's just, and yes, it's not, we're not always as subjective as we could be, but I've seen them where I can go back and look at the proposal and say, you know what, they're right. We missed this, or we didn't nail this, or, our key personnel had his master's degree in this field, but it's really not quite this field. And maybe it's, it really just depends. And then we can look at the price. And if it's a very clear, sometimes it's very clear and we're off by $10 million or something. That's just throwing a number out there, but you know what I mean? But I think it's helpful. And what I like to do, really, win or lose, often there are very positive comments. For example, John, like sections of the proposal that are very positive, the management approach, or there's something that they liked in particular, a graphic, whatever it might be that depicted, whatever. We've had some type of feedback. And I like to pull those for future use, not necessarily to just, repurpose it, but as a good example, something to provide. Maybe if you have somebody that needs to write to something, here's a section that I can give you as we talked a little bit about writer's block. Here's a section I can give you as an example. That is one thing as a proposal manager. I really don't like to give people a blank piece of paper. I like to give them something to start with, because I do think that blank page is very hard. I've noticed oftentimes people can't tell you how to do something, but they can tell you how not to do it. So if I give you something and I didn't do a very good job writing it, or you don't think well, that's not exactly what, how I would do it, then I can get you to do it. So that's another thing. But John, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's kind of 50-50 on that. But generally they're very, it's useful information that we can use going forward for either our next pursuit with that customer, or the next proposal that we do that's in a similar type of format.
Right. Great. Thanks, Lisa. Sorry for joining us late, but great information. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's interesting to note the first question that our Chief Strategy Officer asked about the win was, are you asking for a debrief? Because you find out as much about the winning as you do about the losing.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. I got to sign off and get back on the podium for another customer. So congratulations again on your win, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.